Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the observation window, watching her brother Michael writhe in agony behind the quarantine barrier. The alien virus ravaging his system had already claimed 6 lives on the research station, but she refused to accept him as the 7th. His temperature's rising again. Dr. James Harper reported from his station, voice tight with concern. 145 degrees Fahrenheit. He should be dead. But he's not, Sarah whispered, her dark eyes fixed on the medical readouts. Something about the numbers didn't make sense. Michael's cells were dying and regenerating at impossible rates, locked in a battle that defied everything she knew about human biology. The research station Curiosity hung in high orbit above a distant colony world, its labs filled with the most advanced xenobiological equipment in human space. Sarah had spent 5 years here studying alien diseases, but nothing prepared her for this. The virus had come from an ancient sample, preserved in ice for millennia. One broken containment seal later, and her brother's survey team paid the price. Sarah, James called out sharply. Look at this. She rushed to his console, where a holographic display showed Michael's cellular structure. At first, she thought the image was glitching. The DNA sequences were rewriting themselves in real time, something that should have been impossible. Run it again, she ordered, but the results were the same. Michael's genetic code was adapting, evolving at speeds that made natural selection look glacial. More incredibly, the changes weren't random. They were precise, targeted, as if his DNA knew exactly what it needed to become. This can't be right, James muttered. Human DNA doesn't just reprogram itself. Sarah's fingers flew across the console, comparing Michael's readings to the station's database of alien species. The search returned 0 matches, but a warning flag appeared. Unauthorized access from the Galactic Council's networks. Someone else was watching. A sudden spike in Michael's vitals drew their attention. His temperature was dropping, stabilizing. The virus readings in his bloodstream were diminishing rapidly. He's fighting it off. Sarah breathed. No, he's adapting to it. Through the window, Michael's convulsions had stopped. His eyes opened, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn they shimmered with an inner light. The station's alert system blared to life. Multiple ships were dropping out of hyperspace, Galactic Council vessels, their designs marking them as part of the Division of Biological Threats. They're initiating emergency quarantine protocols, James reported, his face pale. Sarah, they're locking down the entire station. Sarah's mind raced. The Council wasn't known for its gentle handling of biological anomalies. More than one species had disappeared into their quarantine facilities, never to be seen again. Delete the data, she ordered, fingers already moving to purge her own console. What? This could be the biggest discovery in human history. Exactly. Sarah met his eyes. And what do you think they'll do to humanity once they confirm we can rewrite our own DNA? That we might be able to affect theirs. Understanding dawned on James's face, followed quickly by fear. He reached for his console, but a new alert froze them both in place. Warning: station systems locked. Data preservation protocols engaged by order of the Galactic Council. Through the quarantine window, Michael sat up. The movement was too smooth, too controlled for someone who'd been at death's door moments ago. He turned to look directly at Sarah, and this time she was certain. His eyes were glowing with a soft, blue-white light. Sarah, his voice came through the intercom, different somehow. Deeper, more resonant. Something's happening to me. I can see the patterns. What patterns? She asked, even as warning lights indicated the council ships were extending docking tubes. Everything. DNA, quantum fields, dark energy flows. It's all connected. The virus, it wasn't an accident. It was a key, waiting for the right lock. He pressed his hand against his side of the glass, mirroring her earlier gesture. We're not what they think we are, sister. We're so much more. The station shuddered as docking clamps engage. Sarah could hear armored footsteps approaching the lab. Delete what you can, she told James. But download core samples to my private server first. Whatever's happening to Michael, it's just the beginning. The lab doors slid open with a hiss of hydraulics. Armored figures in council biosuits filled the entrance, weapons raised. Dr. Chen, their leader, stepped forward. By order of the Galactic Council, this facility is now under quarantine. Your species has displayed Class 1 biological capabilities without prior authorization or registration. Please step away from the controls. Sarah raised her hand slowly, mind racing. Behind her, through the quarantine glass, Michael smiled. A smile that suggested he knew something the Council didn't. Humanity's true nature had been hidden for so long, but now the change was beginning. And not even the Galactic Council could stop Evolution Research Vessel. The signal's genetic signature was human, but it was being transmitted through the ship's own biological systems. Thor, she called out, keeping her voice steady. What exactly happens to the specimens in your evolution chambers? The Viraxian scientist turned, compound eyes glinting. I'm afraid that's classified information, Dr. Chen. Like the classified evolution chambers on the VSS Helix, the ones currently broadcasting human DNA signatures. Thor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Below them, Michael stopped his demonstration, head tilted as if listening to something no one else could hear. They're changing, Michael said suddenly. The captives. They're not just surviving the experiments. They're absorbing them, evolving. And, he smiled, they're sharing it. Alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency reports flooded in from Viraxian space, entire ships going dark, crews exhibiting unprecedented genetic modifications. Sarah watched as Thor received the updates through his neural link, his exoskeleton paling to a sickly hue. Impossible, the Viraxian whispered. The human genetic structure. It's acting like a virus, but it's not destroying. It's upgrading. Not a virus, Michael corrected, his eyes now blazing with that strange inner light. A key. Each human genome contains the same markers, dormant until now. We're not just test subjects, Cathor. We're catalysts. Sarah's terminal exploded with new data. The kidnapped humans weren't just surviving the Viraxian experiments. Their DNA was rewriting their captors' genetic code. Entire crews were exhibiting human traits, their rigid exoskeletons softening, their compound eyes restructuring into something new. The Ascendant Ruins, Thor said suddenly. The patterns in human DNA, they're identical to the genetic markers we found there. But those ruins are millions of years old. How could? Because we were designed for this, Michael interrupted. Humanity isn't just another species. We're the next step. The link between what is and what could be. He turned to Sarah. And now it's starting. The changes, the evolution, it's spreading faster than anyone predicted. Thor backed away from the observation window, mandibles clicking rapidly. The Council must be informed. This is beyond containment, beyond control. You're right, Sarah agreed, watching as new alerts appeared. More ships going dark, more transformations beginning, but not about informing the Council. Whatever humanity is becoming, we can't let them stop it. She locked down the lab before Thor could reach the door. The Viraxian scientist turned to face her, his posture shifting from scientific curiosity to predatory tension. Your species is changing the fundamental structure of life itself, he hissed. Do you understand what that means? Better than you think, Sarah replied, as Michael placed his hand against the observation glass. Energy rippled from his touch, spreading through the station's systems. We're not your specimens anymore, Thor. We're the future, your future, everyone's future. Through the window, Michael's form began to blur, becoming something more than human but not quite energy. The next stage was beginning, and not even the Viraxians could stop it now. The hunters had become the catalyst for their own evolution, and humanity's ascension was just beginning. The quarantine zone around Earth had tripled in size, but it wasn't containing anything anymore. Sarah watched from the Curiosity's observation deck as another group of alien scientists arrived voluntarily, their ships bearing the markings of a dozen different species. They weren't coming to study humanity anymore. They were coming to join them. The latest transformation was completely successful, James reported, reviewing data from their most recent volunteer. The Centaurian physicist's genetic structure accepted the human markers without any rejection. She's already showing signs of enhanced cognitive ability. Sarah nodded, but her attention was on the long-range sensors. The Galactic Council had declared human DNA a biological weapon of mass destruction, but their efforts to contain it were failing. Species across the galaxy were choosing to accept the change, recognizing it as evolution rather than infection. It's beautiful, isn't it? Michael's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Her brother rarely maintained physical form anymore, existing as a quantum consciousness that could interface with any system. They're all starting to understand. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning. A holographic display materialized, showing the spread of human genetic markers across known space. What had started as isolated incidents on Viraxian ships had become a galaxy-wide phenomenon. Entire civilizations were choosing to incorporate human DNA into their genetic structure, gaining abilities that their species had never dreamed possible. The Council's wrong about this being a weapon, Sarah said, watching as another cluster of systems lit up with transformation signatures. It's more like an invitation. A key to unlock what was always there, Michael agreed, his consciousness briefly coalescing into semi-physical form beside her. The ancient markers in our DNA. They were designed for this. Humanity was created to be the bridge. The station's alert system, activated as a massive energy signature, appeared at the edge of the quarantine zone. A Galactic Council dreadnought, bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to ash. This is High Commander Excel of the Galactic Council, a voice boomed through all channels. The human contagion has been classified as an extinction-level event. By order of the Council, this station and all infected vessels will be sterilized. Sarah's hands flew over the control panels, but Michael was faster. The station's systems responded to his quantum touch, preparing defenses that shouldn't have been possible. They still don't understand, he said, his form becoming more solid, more present. This was always meant to happen. The changes, the transformations, they're part of a pattern older than the Council itself. Through the observation windows, Sarah watched as the volunteer ships moved to form a barrier between the Council dreadnought and the station. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked in perfect coordination, their crews linked by the shared evolution spreading through their ranks. Commander Excel, Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. The transformations aren't harmful. Every species that accepts the change does so voluntarily. We're not destroying life. We're helping it advance. Advance into what? Cell demanded. Your brother barely maintains physical form. The transformed crews show complete genetic restructuring. You're turning sentient beings into what they were always meant to become. Michael finished. His form now blazed with inner light, patterns of energy that matched the ancient markings found in ruins across the galaxy. I can sense it now, Commander. The species that left those ruins, they didn't die out. They didn't disappear. They seeded the galaxy with life, created humanity as a key to unlock the potential in all species. Warning signals blared as the dreadnought's weapons powered up. But before they could fire, something extraordinary happened. Readings showed genetic transformation signatures spreading through the Council ship's biological systems. Impossible. Tell's voice shook. We were sealed against contamination. Unless the change was already within you, Sarah realized. In all species, waiting for the right catalyst to wake it up. The dreadnought's weapons powered down as its crew began experiencing the first stages of transformation. Through the quantum networks that now connected all transformed beings, Sarah could sense their fear giving way to wonder. The Council didn't send us to stop an infection. Cell transmitted, his voice changing, growing. They sent us to witness an awakening. Michael's consciousness expanded, touching each transformed mind in a vast network of shared evolution. "Welcome," he said, both to the council crew and to all those watching across the galaxy, to the next stage of life itself. The quarantine zone became a beacon, drawing more volunteers, more species ready to take the next step. Humanity's gift wasn't a virus or a weapon. It was the key to unlocking the greatest mystery in the galaxy: what life could become when it finally learned to grow beyond its limits. And this was just the beginning. The message came through Michael's quantum consciousness, a signal so ancient it had been encoded into the fabric of space-time itself. Sarah watched as her brother's energy form coalesced into something almost human, his eyes reflecting patterns that matched the genetic markers now spreading throughout the galaxy. "They left instructions," Michael said, his voice resonating with newfound knowledge. "The ones who came before, the architects, they didn't just seed the galaxy with life. They created a path, a roadmap encoded in DNA itself." Thor, who had undergone his own transformation days earlier, moved closer to the holographic display. His once rigid exoskeleton had evolved into an iridescent membrane that shifted with his thoughts. "The Varaxian Empire found something," he admitted, his modified vocal cords producing perfectly clear speech. "A planet, similar to Earth, but dead," Sarah finished, pulling up the classified files Thor had brought with him when he defected. "Show us." The holographic display shifted, revealing a world that could have been Earth's twin. Same size, same optimal distance from its star, same chemical composition. But where Earth teemed with life, this world was a graveyard. Preliminary scans showed the same genetic markers we're seeing now, Thor explained. But something went wrong. The entire biosphere collapsed simultaneously. As if they tried to force evolution instead of letting it spread naturally. Michael interrupted. Through their growing quantum network, Sarah felt his consciousness brush against ancient records buried deep in the dead world's crust. They tried to keep the change for themselves. Warning alerts flashed across the station's sensors. A Varaxian battle fleet had just emerged from hyperspace, led by the dreaded Worldbreaker, a ship capable of shattering planets. "The Empire won't accept evolution they can't control," Thor warned. "They'd rather see humanity destroyed than allow this change to spread further." Sarah's fingers danced across the control panels, but the readings made no sense. The Varaxian ship's weapons were incredibly advanced, yet they seemed primitive compared to the quantum-level changes happening within transformed humans and their allies. "They don't understand what they're facing," Michael said, his form shifting between states of matter. "The architects didn't just leave us a map. They left us tools, quantum-level manipulators built into our very cells." The Worldbreaker opened fire, its main cannon designed to disrupt matter at the atomic level. But as the beam approached the station, something extraordinary happened. The transformed defenders didn't just absorb the attack, they redirected it, using their evolved understanding of quantum fields to turn the weapon's energy into pure information. Impossible. The Varaxian Admiral's transmission crackled with rage. "No species can manipulate matter at that level without technology." "You're still thinking in terms of biological versus mechanical," Michael replied, his consciousness extending through space. The architects understood there was no difference. Life, technology, energy. They're all expressions of the same fundamental patterns. Through the quantum network, Sarah felt the truth of his words. The transformed humans and their allies weren't just evolving biologically. They were transcending the very boundaries between organic and artificial, matter and energy, individual and collective. The dead world, she realized suddenly. It wasn't a failure of the process. It was a warning. The architects knew some would try to hoard this power, to control it. Thor's transformed body pulsed with understanding. "My people found ruins there, but we never decoded their true meaning. We thought they were talking about genetic engineering, about biological weapons. They were talking about choice," Michael finished. Evolution isn't something you can force or control. It has to be accepted, shared, allowed to spread naturally through understanding and willing transformation. The Varaxian fleet held position, their weapons charged but useless against beings who could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. Sarah felt a shift in the quantum network. More and more of the Empire's own citizens were choosing transformation, accepting the change their leaders feared. "You don't have to fight us," Sarah broadcast to the fleet. "What we're offering isn't conquest or submission. It's an invitation to become something more, something we can only achieve together." Through the network, they all felt it. The moment when understanding finally overcame fear. The World Breaker's weapons powered down as its crew began to transform, their collective consciousness joining the ever-growing quantum symphony of evolved life. "The architects didn't leave us a weapon," Michael said, his form now a bridge between matter and energy. "They left us a future, and it's finally beginning." Across the galaxy, the pattern continued to spread, not as a virus or an invasion, but as an awakening. Humanity hadn't just found its place in the cosmos, they had become the key to unlocking its next great evolution. Earth had become ground zero for the greatest transformation in galactic history. Sarah watched from the Curiosity's newly evolved quantum observation systems as waves of change swept across her home planet. Cities morphed into living architectures that responded to their inhabitants' needs, while the transformed humans within them explored abilities that bordered on the miraculous. But something was wrong. "The process is accelerating too quickly," she announced, studying the latest readings from Earth. "The rate of genetic transformation has increased exponentially in the last 24 hours. Michael's consciousness materialized beside her, his form flickering between states more rapidly than before. "I feel it too. The changes that took me weeks are now happening to others in days, sometimes hours." On the main display, they watched as another group of humans underwent spontaneous transformation. Their bodies glowed with quantum energy, their consciousness expanding to join the growing network of evolved minds. But unlike the earlier transformations, these were accompanied by bursts of uncontrolled energy. "Their cellular structure is becoming unstable," Thor observed, his transformed body pulsing with concern. "The quantum fields aren't properly integrating with their physical forms." Sarah's hands flew over the evolved control interfaces, correlating data from multiple sources. "It's like a chain reaction. Each new transformation is catalyzing others nearby, speeding up the process beyond safe limits." Through the quantum network, they felt the first deaths. Transformed humans whose bodies couldn't handle the accelerated evolution, their cells literally burning out from the intensity of the change. "The architect's blueprint," Michael said suddenly, his form solidifying as he accessed ancient data streams. "It wasn't meant to be activated all at once. The markers in our DNA, they were supposed to wake up gradually, over generations." Emergency signals flooded in from across Earth. Transformed humans were experiencing system failures, their enhanced abilities turning against them as their bodies struggled to contain energies they weren't ready to channel. "The Galactic Council is responding," Thor reported, monitoring the quantum communications. "Half want to quarantine Earth completely. Let the process burn itself out. The others are calling for immediate intervention, even if it means eliminating the threat," Sarah finished grimly. "But they don't understand. Stopping the transformations now could be just as dangerous as letting them continue unchecked." Michael's consciousness expanded, touching the minds of the newly transformed. "They're scared," he reported. "The power is intoxicating, but their bodies can't handle it. Some are trying to speed up the process even more, thinking they can push through the pain. Which only makes it worse," Sarah realized. She pulled up the genetic sequences, comparing them to the original markers they'd discovered. "Look at this, the stable transformations, the ones that succeeded, they all retained portions of their original human DNA." Thor moved closer, his evolved senses analyzing the data. "The unchanged genetic sequences, they're not just leftover code, they're stabilizing factors. anchor points for the transformation. Of course, Michael's form pulsed with sudden understanding. The architects didn't want us to abandon our humanity. They wanted us to integrate it with something greater. But now people are trying to force complete transformation. A new alert blared. The Galactic Council's intervention fleet had arrived. But they weren't the only ones. Ships from across the galaxy, carrying representatives of species both transformed and untransformed, moved to surround Earth. "They're not here to stop us," Sarah said, feeling their intentions through the quantum network. "They're here to help." Through their shared consciousness, a solution began to form. The stable transformations hadn't erased human DNA. They'd built upon it, using humanity's unique adaptability as a foundation for something greater. "We need to slow it down," Michael announced, his form stabilizing as he embraced this new understanding. "Not stop the evolution, but guide it. Help people understand that transcendence isn't about leaving their humanity behind. It's about bringing it with us into something new." Sarah finished. She turned to Cthor, whose transformed body now pulsed with purpose. "Can you help us modify the stabilization protocols? Create a way to control the rate of change." The former Varaxian scientist's evolved form shifted with excitement. "Better. I can help design a system that lets each individual's consciousness guide their own transformation. Let them evolve at the pace their bodies and minds can handle." Around Earth, the gathered ships began broadcasting stabilizing frequencies, their evolved crews working in harmony to create a field that would help regulate the chaotic transformations below. "It was never about becoming pure energy," Michael said, watching as the emergency signals from Earth began to decrease. "The architects wanted us to be bridges between matter and energy, past and future, individual and collective." Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of it through the quantum network. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt while remaining fundamentally human. Now that understanding would save them from being consumed by their own evolution. The metamorphosis would continue, but now it would proceed as it was meant to. Not as an uncontrolled flame, but as a guided transformation, building a future that preserved the best of what humanity had always been, while reaching for what they could become. The quantum network screamed with a billion voices. Sarah felt each cry of pain through her evolved consciousness as transformed humans across the galaxy began experiencing critical failures in their genetic structure. Even with the stabilization protocols in place, something was going terribly wrong. "Their bodies are breaking down at the molecular level," Cthor reported, his transformed form fluctuating wildly as he processed the incoming data. "The quantum fields are becoming unstable, creating cascade failures throughout the evolved genetic sequences." Michael materialized in the station's command center, his usually fluid form now jerking between states of matter. "It's happening to all of us," he managed, voice distorting. "The architect's blueprint. There's a flaw in the design." Sarah's enhanced senses could see it now, microscopic tears in the fabric of reality around each transformed being. The power they gained wasn't just burning out their bodies, it was destabilizing the very space-time around them. "Show me the original markers," she demanded, calling up holographic displays of the genetic code that had started everything. "There has to be something we missed." The displays filled the room, showing the intricate dance of DNA sequences that had enabled their evolution. But now Sarah could see what they hadn't noticed before: subtle irregularities in the pattern, tiny imperfections that had been amplified by each transformation. "The dead world," Cthor said suddenly, his scientist's mind making the connection. "The civilization there. They must have discovered the same flaw. Their transformation wouldn't have just killed them. It would have torn their planet's biosphere apart at the quantum level." Through the network, they felt another wave of failures. Transformed humans were beginning to lose control of their abilities. Some phased uncontrollably between dimensions, while others generated dangerous amounts of quantum energy. "How long?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. "Hours, maybe less," Michael replied, his form briefly stabilizing. Once the cascade begins, the breakdown accelerates exponentially. We need a solution now. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, her evolved consciousness processing scenarios at quantum speeds. The untransformed humans, she said suddenly. Their DNA, it's not just resistant to change, it's perfectly stable. What if that's not a weakness? What if it's the key? Cthor moved to the genetic analysis station, his transformed senses examining the unchanged human genome. The base sequences, they're not primitive at all. They're incredibly sophisticated, but in a different way than the evolved patterns. Of course, Michael's voice strengthened as he grasped the concept. The architects didn't make a mistake. We did. We thought unchanged human DNA was just a starting point, something to be overcome. But what if it's actually the foundation? Sarah finished. The stable platform that makes controlled evolution possible. She turned to the communications array. We need to broadcast this to everyone. Stop trying to force complete transformation. Instead, merge the evolved sequences with unchanged human DNA. But before they could act, a new crisis erupted. The quantum instabilities had reached a critical point, creating tears in spacetime around transformed populations. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace, carrying refugees from worlds where evolution had spun out of control. We don't have time to gradually reintegrate the sequences, Cthor warned. The breakdown is accelerating, without immediate intervention. Then we do it all at once, Michael said, his form solidifying with purpose. Use the quantum network itself. We're all connected now. What affects one of us affects all of us. Sarah saw the risk immediately. A simultaneous genetic resequencing across every transformed being in the galaxy. The energy requirements alone would be exactly what we're generating as we break down, Cthor realized. We can use the excess quantum energy from the destabilization to power the reintegration. Michael's consciousness expanded, touching every transformed mind in range. But it has to be voluntary, he insisted. Everyone has to understand and accept that true evolution isn't about abandoning our original nature. It's about transcending while remaining grounded in who we are. Through the quantum network, Sarah broadcast the truth they'd discovered. The architects hadn't failed in their design. They'd created something perfect in its imperfection. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to change completely, but their ability to change while remaining fundamentally themselves. Across the galaxy, transformed beings made their choice. As one, they reached back to their unchanged human DNA, not to reject their evolution, but to stabilize it. The quantum network hummed with purpose as billions of minds worked in concert, using their combined consciousness to guide the reintegration. The process was beautiful and terrifying. Energy cascaded through the network as genetic sequences rewrote themselves, finding the perfect balance between transformation and stability. In that moment, every evolved being understood. They weren't meant to become pure energy, pure consciousness. They were meant to be bridges, anchored in their humanity while reaching for the stars. As the new pattern stabilized, Sarah felt something else through the network. A signal, ancient but clear, carrying a message that had waited eons to be understood. The architects hadn't created a flawed design. They'd created a test, one that humanity had just passed. The reintegration of human DNA had done more than save them. It had opened doors none of them had imagined possible. Sarah stood in the Curiosity's evolved command center, watching as the quantum network transformed from a simple communication system into something far more profound. It's like a symphony, Michael said, his form now perfectly balanced between energy and matter, each species contributing its own unique patterns to the greater whole. The holographic displays showed the spread of the new transformation across the galaxy. Unlike the chaotic evolution they'd narrowly avoided, this change was harmonious, controlled. Each species that accepted the human genetic templates found their own DNA responding in unique and beautiful ways. Cthor's transformed body pulsed with excitement as he analyzed the data. The Varaxian genetic structure. It's not just accepting the human markers, It's enhancing them. Our natural ability to process complex mathematical patterns is creating entirely new quantum computational abilities. Sarah nodded, watching as similar reports came in from across known space. The Centaurians' natural photosynthetic abilities merged with human consciousness to create beings who could directly process stellar energy. The crystalline Tyre found their silicon-based biology perfectly complemented human neural patterns, enabling unprecedented forms of data storage and processing. The architects didn't just design humans to be catalysts, she realized. They designed us to be universal adapters. Our DNA doesn't overwrite other species. It connects with them, creates something greater than either could be alone. Through the quantum network, they felt the ripples of change spreading. The Galactic Council, once divided over the human threat, now served as a coordination point for the greatest cooperative endeavor in known history. Species that had been mortal enemies found their evolved consciousness naturally reaching for harmony. "Look at this," Thor called out, directing their attention to a new data stream. The quantum field interactions, they're not random. There's a pattern emerging. Michael's consciousness expanded to examine the phenomenon. "It's like a language," he said after a moment. "Not just information, but music. The quantum frequencies of each transformed species are creating a harmonic structure." Sarah felt it too. The mathematical beauty of millions of evolved minds working in concert, each contribution strengthening the whole. "The Varaxian Empire's fleet is approaching," she announced, but there was no fear in her voice. The once dreaded world breaker appeared in normal space, but it had changed. Its biological components had evolved along with its crew, turning the weapon of mass destruction into something new, a vessel of transformation and healing. "We understand now." The Varaxian admiral's transformed consciousness touched theirs through the network. "Our species' obsession with genetic manipulation. We were trying to force our way to a destination that could only be reached through cooperation." Thor moved to welcome his former enemies, his evolved form resonating with theirs in perfect harmony. "The architects knew this would happen," he said. "Every species' unique traits, every biological adaptation, they're all parts of a greater design." Through the quantum network, Sarah accessed the ancient data streams buried in the ruins scattered across the galaxy. With her evolved consciousness, she could finally read them properly. "These aren't just records," she breathed. "They're sheet music, instructions for a symphony that needs every instrument to be complete." Michael's form shifted with excitement, and humanity's role was never to be the whole orchestra. We're the conductors, the ones who could help each species find its proper place in the greater harmony. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued, but now it followed the music written in the quantum fields themselves. Each species discovered that their unique traits, rather than being lost in the evolution, became essential notes in a growing symphony of life. The World Breakers crew joined the network, their military precision adding structure and order to the quantum harmonies. The Centaurians brought their star songs, the Tyre their crystalline resonances. Even the few species that chose not to transform found their natural frequencies strengthening the whole. "The dead world," Sarah said suddenly, pulling up the data from the failed civilization. "They didn't fail because they were too weak. They failed because they tried to play the symphony alone." Understanding rippled through the network. The architects hadn't created humanity to dominate or replace other species. They'd created them to bring the galaxy together, to help each form of life find its place in a greater composition. Thor's transformed consciousness touched the quantum harmonies, adding Varaxian precision. The quantum symphony had transformed the galaxy in ways that defied traditional understanding. Earth, once a relatively isolated world, had become the center of a new civilization that transcended traditional boundaries between matter and energy, individual and collective, biology and technology. Sarah stood in what had once been the Curiosity's command center, though like everything else, it had evolved far beyond its original form. The station had become a living entity, a convergence point where multiple species came to explore their expanding potential. "Another group is ready," Michael announced, his presence simultaneously physical and quantum. He led a diverse collection of beings, transformed humans, evolved Viraxians, and representatives from a dozen other species, all prepared to take the final step into true transcendence. The process they'd developed was no longer the dangerous, uncontrolled evolution they'd narrowly avoided. Instead, it was a carefully orchestrated transition, allowing beings to exist simultaneously in multiple states while maintaining their essential nature. "Remember," Sarah addressed the group, her consciousness touching theirs through the network. "Transcendence isn't about leaving your original form behind. It's about expanding beyond it while keeping your core identity intact." Thor, who had become one of the most skilled guides for the transformation, moved among the candidates. His evolved form shifted between states effortlessly, demonstrating the perfect balance they would learn to achieve. "The quantum harmonies are aligned," he reported, his scientist's precision now enhanced by transformed awareness. Each candidate's genetic structure has fully integrated with their chosen evolutionary path. Through the network, Sarah felt the unique signature of each being. The mathematical brilliance of the Viraxians, the stellar consciousness of the Centaurians, the crystalline clarity of the Tyarkari, all woven together with human adaptability into something greater than the sum of its parts. The transformation chamber, a space that existed simultaneously in normal spacetime and quantum realms, began to pulse with energy. But unlike the chaotic power that had nearly destroyed them, this was ordered, harmonious, each frequency precisely tuned to the universal symphony they'd discovered. "It's beginning," Michael announced as the first candidates started to shift between states of being. Their physical forms became fluid, their consciousness expanded. Yet each maintained that crucial connection to their original nature that prevented loss of self. Sarah monitored the process through both scientific instruments and her evolved senses. The candidates weren't just changing form, they were expanding into new dimensions of existence, becoming beings who could navigate quantum realms as easily as physical space. "The signal's getting stronger," Cathor reported suddenly, his attention drawn to a particular quantum frequency they'd been monitoring for weeks. "The pattern matches the architect's original transmissions, but it's clearer now, more immediate." Sarah felt it too. A presence in the quantum fields, vast and ancient yet somehow familiar. "They're coming," she realized. "The architects. They're returning." Through the network, she shared the revelation with the gathered species. The beings who had seeded the galaxy with life, who had encoded the potential for transcendence in human DNA, were responding to humanity's success. "They're not just coming back," Michael corrected, his consciousness expanding to interpret the complex quantum signals. "They're already here, have been here, watching, waiting to see if we understand their gift correctly." The transformation chamber filled with new energy as the candidates completed their transition. Each emerged as something new yet familiar. Beings of both matter and energy, able to shift between states at will while maintaining their unique identities and contributions to the greater whole. "We did what no other species managed," Thor observed, his transformed consciousness resonating with pride. "We learned to share evolution instead of hoarding it, to create harmony instead of dominance." Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of it through the quantum symphony that now connected all transformed life. Humanity's gift hadn't been superior genetics or greater power. It had been the ability to adapt while helping others do the same, to change while remaining true to their essential nature. The architect's presence grew stronger in the quantum fields, their ancient consciousness reaching out to touch the civilization they had helped birth. Through the network, their message became clear. Humanity hadn't just passed their test, they had exceeded it, creating something even the architects hadn't imagined possible. It was never about becoming like them. Sarah realized, watching as the newly transcended beings explored their expanded existence. It was about becoming ourselves, all of us together, creating something new. The galaxy pulsed with unified purpose as more species joined the transformation, each adding their unique frequencies to the universal symphony. Earth had become more than a cradle of life. It was now a beacon, showing the way to a future where evolution meant cooperation instead of competition, harmony instead of discord. And in the quantum fields that connected all things, the architect's final message resonated with joy. Humanity had not only found their place in the cosmos, they had helped create a new one. A reality where transcendence meant not the end of what they were, but the beginning of what they could all become together.